A team of volunteers is just back from a medical mission to help children.
They are all part of a Rochester organization called HUGS, which stands for Help Us Give Smiles. 13 Wham News went along so we could show you what they do.
HUGS stands for Help Us Give Smiles, and it's a name that works.
Es una gran bendición.
It's a blessing you come here from USA to help us.
HUGS missions bring life-changing surgery to children with cleft lips and palates and microtia, a birth defect marked by a severe deformity of the ear.
Especially with something as complicated as microtia, there's no one in this country who does it. And so unless, teams like ours or other teams come by, they just wouldn't get it.
Next, you have a 5-0 Chromic P-3.
Planning for this trip meant packing 19 hockey bags with medical equipment.
I'll take great care of him, don't worry.
And making friends with the airline to cut the cost of flying all of this and a team of 30 doctors, nurses, and other volunteers to Guatemala.
Buenos días a todos.
They work in this charity hospital in the town of Antigua. The team will serve patients who were identified long before the trip. Many of these patients come from faraway, remote villages. Oscar, anxious to get help for his son, arrived 5 days ahead of the HUGS team. Starting Sunday morning, families wait patiently to be called and are then moved through an assembly line of paperwork, picture-taking, and consults with the doctors.
And then there is the complex choreography of surgery day in a foreign country, in a hospital where you're not used to operating. 5 days in a row, 5 operating rooms all going at the same time, 79 patients in all, 79 lives changed forever.
For Kim Palumbo, who plans all the group's missions, getting to know the children makes it all worth it.
A typical mission takes about 6 to 8 months to plan, dealing with all the logistics, but this is my favorite part. Seeing them after they're all done and just spending time with them. I could do this every single day. This is my favorite.
HUGS also travels each year to Vietnam and Ecuador, and in 2019, will add a week in Peru and a second week here in Guatemala.
A typical mission for HUGS might cost $50,000, give or take, depending on the country. That is about the total cost of one microtia surgery in the United States. And on this mission, the HUGS team did 33 microtia surgeries and repaired more than 40 cleft lips and palates. Since 2003, HUGS has helped more than 1,500 children. There's more information about HUGS, Rochester-based, and founded here, and it can be found on 13wham.com.
And like she said in that story, the smiles at the end.
I got to tell you, when we got there that first day, I walked out into that courtyard and I saw all those families, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, the impact is clear.
Oh my gosh, it's very powerful, very overwhelming.
Story.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
A group of volunteers, many of them from Rochester, just spent a week on a medical mission in Guatemala.
And we went along to see how the Rochester-based HUGS Foundation helps repair facial deformities for children there. Without their work, these kids would be bullied, ostracized, or even abandoned. But because of the HUGS team, including one doctor with an infectious laugh, these children have hope and reason to smile.
These doctors and nurses pay their own way to volunteer for a week of hard work in one of the world's poorest countries. And yet, I'm told, it's no sacrifice.
It's a benefit, I tell you. I'm not sacrificing. Don't kid yourself. I gain from this much more than I lose. No question about it.
And with that, Dr. Neil Goldman is speaking for pretty much every volunteer who's ever gone on a HUGS mission.
It always feels busy when you leave, but as soon as you get here, you reorient your priorities and just focus on the purpose and the reasons why you're here. And then you, as soon as the last day comes, you say, I'm coming back.
On one of the trips, I had this little girl all of a sudden look up to me and say, you've made my dreams come true. And it just makes you pause.
It's the reason why I wanted to be a nurse, is to be able to come and do these, to do a medical mission.
You ask any of the doctors, the nurses, the other volunteers why they come on these mission trips, and they give lots of explanations, but it all comes down to the children.
Dr. Bill Koenig, a surgeon from Rochester, says these missions remind him of how lucky we are.
As Americans, you're born in the right country. As a human, I was born without any medical problems, no birth defects. As a child, I had great parents who taught me and raised me, and so you got to give it back because not everyone is that lucky. So I think when you're lucky, you got to share it.
Intense, exciting, busy, but very fulfilling.
It is always very humbling, and I've never left thinking, why did I do that?
And the fact that Hugs comes back every year and follows up makes a big difference for the patients and the volunteers.
This is the right way to do it. Come in, commit to a country, come in, come back, make relationships.
These families don't know who we are. They don't know that I know what I'm doing or that I take care of this back in Rochester. To them, they just instill an amazing amount of trust, and they hand us their most precious things, which are their babies, and they allow us to take care of them.
We get to know the families. I recognize them. I look forward to seeing them. They are my Facebook buddies. It's kind of funny, actually. I get messages from them. Like, it's the world is becoming smaller every year.
When the mission's over, there is both fatigue and renewal.
Tired. But these are the best weeks. These are the best weeks of my year. And I come back from these things and I feel like I can do more work at home than I normally can, and definitely nothing bothers me at home. It's really kind of gives me that spark of energy.
A spark that's brought Dr. Goldman back for 14 missions. And like so many members of this team, he will be back again.
I had to keep him in as much as I could. That laugh just makes me laugh, but he is such an important member of the team. Tomorrow on 13 WHAM News, the surgery days, how the team changes the lives of these children.
It does remind you that we have won the lottery of life. To be in this country and to give back is so important.
And I think for these surgeons and nurses, and they go to these countries, Vietnam, Ecuador, and Guatemala, and they get the reminder and the renewal every time they go.
Yeah, I give them a lot of credit for doing it on their own time and their own dollar.
More tomorrow.
A team from Rochester, the based Hugs Foundation, is just back from their latest mission, their annual trip to Guatemala.
And while there, the volunteers performed surgery on more than 75 children with facial deformities. We warn you, there's some surgery shots in this story. 13 WHAM News went with the Hugs team last month to see how, in just a week's time, they can change so many lives.
So you're going to take the second first on Tuesday and move it to the second first on Wednesday.
On a Hugs mission, the old saying, time is money, doesn't apply. This team pays its own way here and works for free. But time is precious. And by using it wisely, they can do more for these children.
These kids are born with a deformity that would last their lifetime otherwise and is obvious to the rest of the world, and so it's kind of nice to be able to help improve their life for the remainder of their life.
Trying to keep 5 operating rooms full for 5 days straight is key to helping as many children as possible. But in the first hours of the first surgery day of this mission, there was a problem.
Our first patient decided not to have surgery, which is a 5-hour block of surgery, and we're scrambling to move the patient up from tomorrow, but we have a small window at this hour before they eat, and once they've eaten, then we can't move them up into surgery, and we're done.
You guys good?
Head nurse Joe Bretz, who is on his 26th Hugs mission, knows dealing with the unexpected is to be expected.
You have to sort of think on your feet, and you have to be willing to say, we don't have this, but we have this. You might have to substitute something.
And sure enough, minutes later, the problem of that canceled first patient is solved.
So they found a patient who, was it the original patient? Okay, who had not had breakfast.
Who had not had breakfast.
Wow.
And so we moved him up. So.
Good things.
Yeah, good things.
The days are long. Doctors and nurses are often on their feet in the OR for 12 hours.
It's almost like this week energized me for the whole year. I'm physically tired when I leave, but psychologically I'm ready to go, and it just kind of fires me up to be a nurse.
Scissors?
This is Alyssa Iacona's first mission.
I kept been actually thinking that it was going to be challenging and intense and nonstop, and it has been.
This is one of the 3 ORs dedicated to microtia surgery this week. Children with microtia are born with a badly deformed ear or no ear at all. So the plastic surgeons in there are creating an ear for this child. Cartilage from the patient's rib cage is carved into the shape of an ear, then inserted under the skin on the side of the child's head.
The doctors will come back each year to finish the work
Put the section in, and there we go.
of creating a normal-looking ear. For kids with cleft lips, there is more immediate gratification and emotion when a parent sees his child's new face for the first time.
Yeah, those kids' faces get you. Tomorrow we're going to focus on the kids, their families, and where they come from, where around Guatemala they come from, and what they sacrifice to get there.
And they come a week in advance and wait hours in line.
One lady was there a month in advance waiting to meet these doctors.
I'm sure it's worth it to her. All right, great story. There are some 1,500 children in Guatemala who have benefited from the work of the Rochester-based Hugs Foundation.
Hugs medical teams travel there each year to repair facial deformities, which are more common in that country. As we learned when we traveled with those volunteers last month, their payment is always the same: gratitude.
First thing Sunday morning, families are already waiting in the hospital courtyard. Some have traveled far for help that wouldn't be possible without the Hugs team. The waiting is made easier by Linda, the volunteer in charge of entertaining the kids. Kids like Vilma. And through her tears, Vilma's mom thanks those who will help her daughter.
Gracias por... Les agradezco mucho.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Kind of make you feel like, okay, I'm a better human being because I have taken part in helping other human being without any expecting any reward whatsoever. The only reward is personal gratitude.
To better understand that gratitude, we visited villages typical of where the families come from. Guatemala is a beautiful place, but it is also one of the poorest countries in Latin America. In fact, more than half of its people get by on less than $2.50 per day. In one village, we walked through a typical market where people sell colorful clothing and local produce. We saw men working on farms. Coffee and chocolate are major exports. And we saw women washing clothes by hand in a community pool. They are hardworking, but mostly poor people. And when it comes to medical care, the need for the Hugs team in Guatemala is clear.
I want to thank everybody for coming this week and having confidence in our ability to do surgery on you.
Hugs founder Dr. Vito Quatella and his team performed more than 75 surgeries on this mission. This applause is their paycheck for changing faces and, in the process, changing lives.
And we conclude our reports tomorrow. Someone you should know from that mission in Guatemala.
And not only are they getting medical care, they're getting some of the best our country has to offer in their own country.
And something that is not offered at all in their country. But you're right, they're sending some real top-notch docs and nurses down there.
Perhaps you've heard the commercials. Dr. Vito Quatella is well known for his plastic surgery center on East Avenue.
But when I traveled with him on a medical mission trip last month, I learned there's another side to this prominent doctor. And it's what makes him someone you should know.
This trip to Guatemala was Vito Quatella's 31st mission with Hugs, the foundation he started 15 years ago.
Why do people do anything, you know? People do things for money, do things for power, do things for a reward of some sort, right?
The volunteer doctors and nurses repaired facial deformities for 76 children in just 5 days.
On any trip I've ever done, I've always received much more than I've ever given. I get it all. I feel powerful, I feel rich by coming here.
Many of the surgeons who come on these missions trained under Dr. Q, and while they certainly learned surgical skills from him, he is most proud that they are following another example he set.
Who does this? Who creates a foundation and goes all over the world and does these things?
I think it's just the high point of my year, probably. Love working with the kids, love seeing my colleagues, and working with my mentor, Dr. Quatella.
It's rewarding, not only, you know, from an ego standpoint that I trained them, but that that they sort of learned about giving back and that they want to come back for that reason. And that's the part that amazes me the most.
Muy bonita.
Kim Palumbo is executive director of Hugs, the foundation's only employee.
All he wants is to get here and do surgery and make it better for these kids.
And he wants to do more of that. Instead of 3 week-long Hugs missions each year, Dr. Quatella is planning to add 2 more weeks in 2019. In fact, he has plans for Hugs missions for the next 20 years.
I know the next 6 sites, I know what they are, and it's just a matter of, the logistics, making a site visit, finding a hospital that's willing to have you. The kids all want you.
And it's those kids who make this doctor want to keep coming back and make him someone you should know.
You can see all the reports from our journey with Hugs on 13wham.com. And a shout out to photographer John McClintock. He and his colleagues here are not recognized enough for the work that they do, and John did a great job on that Guatemala trip.
The visuals he documented are just so inspiring to see the difference they're making there.
We did 6 stories and a 7th for the web, and we probably could have done 100.
Yeah.
It was just that kind of trip.
More to check out on the website.
Yep.
Thank you, Doc.